This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Harvester by Gene Stratton-Porter. Read by Cindy Steib. Chapter 19, Part 2. A Vertical Spine. So through the cooling fall days they worked together. They were very happy. Before her wondering eyes the Harvester hung queer branches, burrs, nuts, berries, and trailing vines with curious seed pods. There were masses of brilliant flowers, most of them strange to the Girl, many to the great average of humanity. While she sat bending over them, beside her the Harvester delved in the black earth of the woods, or the clay and sand of the open hillside, or the muck of the lake shore, and lifted large bagfuls of roots that he later drenched on the floating raft on the lake, and when they had drained he dried them. Some of them he did not wet, but scraped and wiped clean and dry. Often after she was sleeping, and long before she awoke in the morning, he was at work carrying heaped trays from the evaporator to the storeroom, and tying the roots, leaves, bark, and seeds into packages. While he gathered trillium roots, the Girl made drawings of the plant and learned its commercial value. She drew lady's slipper and Solomon's seal and learned their uses and prices, and carefully traced wild ginger leaves while nibbling the aromatic root. It was difficult to keep from protesting when the work carried them around the lake shore and to the pokeberry beds, for the colour of these she loved. It required careful explanation as to the value of the roots and seeds as blood purifier, and the argument that in a few more days the frost would level the bed, to induce her to consent to its harvesting. But when the case was properly presented, she put aside her drawing and stained her slender fingers gathering the seeds, and loved the work. The sun was golden on the lake. The birds of the upland were clustering over reeds and rushes for the sake of plentiful seed and convenient water. Many of them sang fitfully. The notes of almost all of them were melodious, and the day was a long, happy dream. There was but little left to gather until ginseng time. For that the Harvester had engaged several boys to help him, for the task of digging the roots, washing and drying them, burying part of the seeds, and preparing the remainder for market seemed endless for one man to attempt. After a full day the Harvester lay before the fire, and his head was so close the Girl's knee that her fingers were in reach of his hair. Every time he mended the fire he moved a little, until he could feel the touch of her garments against him. Then he began to plan for the winter, how they would store food for the long, cold days, how much fuel would be required, when they would go to the city for their winter clothing, what they would read, and how they would work together at the drawings. "I am almost too anxious to wait longer to get back to my carving," he said. "Who ever would have thought this spring that fall would come and find the birds talking of going, the caterpillars spinning winter quarters, the animals holing up, me getting ready for the cold, and your candlesticks not finished? Winter is when you really need them. Then there is solid cheer in numbers of candles and a roaring wood fire. The furnace is going to be a good thing to keep the floors and the bathroom warm, but an open fire of dry, crackling wood is the only rational source of heat in a home. You must watch for the fairy dances on the back wall, Ruth, and learn to trace goblin faces in the coals. Sometimes there is a panorama of temples and trees, and you will find exquisite colour in the smoke. Dry maple makes a lovely lavender, soft and fine as a floating veil, and damp elm makes a blue, and hickory red and yellow. I almost can tell which wood is burning after the bark is gone by the smoke and flame colour. When the little red fire fairies come out and dance on the back wall, it is fun to figure what they are celebrating. By the way, Ruth, I have been a lamb for days. I hope you have observed. But I would sleep a little sounder to night if you only could give me a hint whether that kiss is coming on at all." He tipped back his head to see her face, and it was glorious in the red firelight. The big eyes never appeared so deep and dark. The tilted head struck her hand, and her fingers ran through his hair. "You said to forget it," she reminded him, "and then it would come sooner." "Which same translated means that it is not here yet." "Well, I didn't expect it, so I am not disappointed. But begorry, I do wish it would materialize by Christmas. I think I will work for that. Wouldn't it make a day worth while, though? By the way, what do you want for Christmas, Ruth?" "A doll," she answered. The Harvester laughed. He tipped his head again to see her face, and suddenly grew quiet, for it was very serious. "I am quite in earnest," she said. "I think the big dolls in the stores are beautiful, and I never owned only a teeny little one. All my life I've wanted a big doll as badly as I ever longed for anything that was not absolutely necessary to keep me alive. In fact, a doll is essential to a happy childhood. The mother instinct is so ingrained in a girl that if she doesn't have dolls to love, even as a baby, she is deprived of a part of her natural rights. It's a pitiful thing to have been the little girl in the picture who stands outside the window and gazes with longing soul at the doll she is anxious to own and can't ever have. Harvester, I was always that little girl. I am quite in earnest. I want a big, beautiful doll more than anything else." As she talked, the Girl's fingers were idly threading the Harvester's hair. His head lightly touched her knee, and she shifted her position to afford him a comfortable resting place. With a thrill of delight that shook him, the man laid his head in her lap and looked into the fire, his face glowing as a happy boy's. "You shall have the loveliest doll that money can buy, Ruth," he promised. "What else do you want?" "A roasted goose, plum pudding, and all those horrid, indigestible things that Christmas stories always tell about, and popcorn balls and candy, and everything I've always wanted and never had, and a long, beautiful day with you. That's all." "Ruth, I am so happy I almost wish I could go to Heaven right now before anything occurs to spoil this," said the Harvester. The wheels of a car rattled across the bridge. He whirled to his knees and put his arms around the Girl. "Ruth," he said huskily, "I'll wager $1,000 I know what is coming. Hug me tight, quick, and give me the best kiss you can. Any old kind of a one, so you touch my lips with yours before I've got to open that door and let in trouble." The Girl threw her arms around his neck, and with the imprint of her lips warm on his, the Harvester crossed the room, and his heart dropped from the heights with a thud. He stepped out, closing the door behind him, and crossing the veranda passed down the walk. He recognized the car as belonging to a garage in Onabasha, and in it sat two men. One of them spoke. "Are you David Langston?" "Yes," said the Harvester. "Did you send a couple of photographs to a New York detective agency a few days ago with inquiries concerning some parties you wanted located?" "I did," said the Harvester, "but I was not expecting any such immediate returns." "Your questions touched on a case that long has been in the hands of the agency, and they telegraphed the parties. The following day the people had a letter giving them the information they required from another source." "That is where Uncle Henry showed his fine Spencerian hand," commented the Harvester. "It always will be a great satisfaction that I got my fist in first. Is Miss Jameson here?" "No," said the Harvester. "My wife is at home. Her surname was Ruth Jameson, but we have been married since June. Did you wish to speak with Mrs. Langston?" "I came for that purpose. My name is Kennedy. I am the law partner and the closest friend of the young lady's grandfather. News of her location has prostrated her grandmother so that he could not leave her, and I was sent to bring the young woman." "Oh!" said the Harvester. "Well, you will have to interview her about that. One word first. She does not know that I sent those pictures and made that inquiry. One other word. She is just recovering from a case of fever, induced by wrong conditions of life before I met her. She is not so strong as she appears. Understand you are not to be abrupt. Go very gently. Her feelings and health must be guarded with extreme care." The Harvester opened the door